pestered me anyway. So at that point, I kind of had to learn something about them, or live in an underground tunnel system somewhere and never come out again.
Wow.
So that's how I started doing it. After my first encounter was in '72, and I just kind of figured, well, if I don't go into the woods, then no problem, right? You know. Now, 5 years later, there was one right on the yard, so now that didn't work.
Wow.
Then I was obligated to find out more about them, and that's how I got started with it. So next year is my 50th anniversary of doing field research, and my 50th anniversary of actually seeing one has long since passed, a little while ago.
Wow, that's quite amazing. Paul and Donnie, I will let you ask our wonderful guests the questions that you have.
Oh, great. Well, I've done a lot of Bigfoot hunting. I've been to, I did some Bigfoot hunting over at San Gabriel Mountains, Lake Tahoe, Mount Shasta, Sierra Nevada Mountains, Mount Diablo, and San Bruno Mountain. And I'm retired from the California Department of Fish and Game, or Fish and Wildlife. And I talked to a lot of hunters, a lot of fishermen, and some of those hunters, they knew that I was a paranormal investigator. They would tell me their own experiences. And one story really caught my attention. The hunter said that his what was it, his grandfather? Yeah, it was his grandfather was out hunting. And this was back in, I think it was 1964 at Mount Shasta. And he claims that his grandfather saw this Bigfoot and aimed his rifle at the Bigfoot, shot it, and it blew up into sparks. And if that story is true, and I asked him, I said, because I'm an author, I write books, I write articles, and I asked him, can I put your grandfather's story in here? He says, yeah, sure, but don't use any names. You know, I don't want to be the laughing stock to all these other hunters. You know, I know a lot of hunters out there. So, but that tells me if Bigfoot blew up into sparks, that means he can transform from energy to matter, matter to energy. Just like Einstein said, E equals mc squared. Energy can be to matter, matter to energy. So possibly Bigfoot is an interdimensional cryptid, and that's why we can't find any bones. We can't, you know, the only thing I think with Bigfoot, they find the nests, they find his footprints, all kinds of stuff like that, but they don't actually physically find any dead Bigfoot. They don't find any fecal matter, you know, so it's probably because
Correction, there has been fecal matter found. We found it ourselves. Other people have found it.
And did they check
it? With that is, who are you going to get to test it? And who's going to put out the big pile of money to have it tested? We're all poor. We can't afford it.
Okay, so you didn't have it tested, so how do you know it's from Bigfoot?
Quite obvious from the appearance. You got logs that look like what a human drops out, except the thickness of a soup can and a foot long, and there's 10 of them in a pile. No human left it.
Yeah, but too bad you can't get a solid word from some scientist that says, yeah, I tested it, and it happens to come from an unknown primate.
Well, this whole testing thing, everybody thinks, well, that's the be-all, end-all. You got to get some DNA evidence and have it tested. It's been done. Dr. Ketchum did the DNA study. Go look it up, sasquatchgenome.net. Gives all the results. That was over 10 years ago. She had 113 samples, mostly hair tissue, and there were some fecal samples there too. But anytime you get this stuff, it's like, okay, who are you going to have tested? Because most labs, if you tell them what you think it is, they absolutely won't test it. And if they do test it, well, sometimes they just lie and say they tested it and it was nothing unusual. And then other times, if it's something unusual, they don't want their name on anything. So that's like, yeah, okay. As soon as we got some, like extremely big budget where you can run around and collect samples and get them tested, and then you got to find the lab to test them at.
So I
That'll actually test them.
Duke, you and I did have this question a couple times before. I was a guest on your show, and you were guest with me a couple different shows, and we did discuss this topic more than a couple times, and we did mention Dr. Ketchum, and her hard work is really truly amazing. So now, if we have so much evidence, do you think that government is maybe in denial, or why they're trying to hide that there is a possibility of basically Bigfoot existing or being with us for already, like Paul is saying, for such a long time? Even I know me and Donnie had a discussion more than a couple times. So is it true that, these primates are not primates? Maybe they're, like Paul is saying, coming from different dimensions. Why the government or the world is being so secretive about these creatures? What is your opinion?
Pulls apart their narrative. That's why. Does not support their narrative. Pokes big holes in it. Causes all kinds of problems for them. Problems they don't want to deal with. And like one problem they don't want to deal with is not being able to use the timber in North America. It's worth a ton of money. And they get a lot of pressure from logging companies to go out there and log things. Well, if they actually admit that there's, feral people living out in the woods, what happens to logging?
Sure.
All of a sudden they can't do it anymore. They made a big ruckus over the spotted owl and cut off all the logging over that thing. And then, of course, found out after the fact it wasn't the only place it was living. But, well, it stopped all the logging in the meantime. And that was just, as far as they were concerned, that was a test run on. They stopped the logging in this area because they found this little Tweety bird. What's going to happen when they admit that Bigfoot are in all these big forests all over the continent and cutting down their habitat?
It's quite scary. I'm gonna drop a little bomb, I should say, here for everybody in the chat. And, as we are sitting here via the panel, I would like to know, Donnie and Paul, please join us. What do you gentlemen think? Why are we having such a big secret about the Bigfoot? We have so many people witnessing, their existence. We have so many written encounters. You're not talking about people hallucinating, being delusional. Of course, illness does exist. Unfortunately, that's part of this world. I wish everybody is healthy, but so we are not saying, that there's issues that it doesn't exist out there, but not everybody is taking some substances. Not everybody is having some mental issues. So I'm just wondering, why do you think, and everybody in the chat, please, you can share your opinion too, why they're being so secretive about the Bigfoot existence? Anybody? Paul or Donnie?
Why are they covering up the giants and the Nephilim? Same answer. Breaks their narrative.
Okay. What do you think, Paul?
Well, just like Duke was saying, the Smithsonian supposedly confiscated all these giants' bones and hid them from the public. They don't want us to know that giants existed and lived on this planet. So, why the government hides so many different things? I mean, just like S4 at Area 51. Bob Lazar was saying that they were reverse engineering UFOs. So, again, the government hides this and hides that. Since I was in 97 Bravo, intelligence analyst, military intelligence, 501st Military Intelligence Branch in Seoul, Korea, and I know for a fact that military intelligence was investigating UFOs with their reconnaissance satellites. Again, it was secret. I had a top secret SBI special background investigation clearance, so I'm very familiar with that.
I'm sorry, you guys. Where's that popping crackling sound?
That's what I was going to say. Where is the popping coming from? Anybody know?
Yeah, where's that coming from?
I am muting my mouth. It's not for me.
Well, let me.
Hey, Paul, can you mute your mic for a sec? I think it's coming. Danielle?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I muted, and it's not coming from me. What is that?
Okay. I don't know.
Somebody got a dog chewing on a bone in the background? That's
No,
what it sounds like.
you know what it is? It's Bigfoot chewing bubble gum.
And this is another thing, you guys. I'm gonna tell you something that you will be all shocked. I'm gonna share this straightforward. Today, while I was off, I am off for a couple of days. I earned my fair and square time to be off. So, because I'm celebrating my Easter. What was happening? I got a phone call from Rogers, and they were asking for operation manager from the villa. I said, I'm not the operation manager of the villa. How can I help? They said that they have a huge issue. And I said, you have to call the villa. So they were calling the villa, and I forwarded, of course, the phone call to the operation manager. I actually think that Canada should never be, hello, my beautiful lady, that Canada could never sell show cable to Rogers since we have them. I don't know how many people, organizations, places are having issues with internet connections. It's just horrible. I'm being honest with you. And we are talking about institutions that pay thousands of the dollars for their securities. They have ITT techs and things like that. And I called the staff and I was like, what's happening, you guys? Did you? Yeah, Danielle. I'm like, they were calling me. And I said, I'm not an operation manager. You shouldn't call me. And they were calling actually back, and then they were like, oh, they just arrived, they're making a big fuss, they're working on towers and blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so I didn't know this is going to happen. For example,